So communication is what we want to focus on today. And it's interesting because I was just up at the Mayo Clinic speaking yesterday, a room full of HR people, and communication, bar none, was the highest thing that they struggle with in their company. Sales, not an issue as much. Operations, not an issue as much. Marketing, I mean, they walk through a variety of different opportunities within their company. And we found out that communication topped the list. And interestingly enough, about 85% of our success every day is due not to our drive, not to our passion, not to our education, thank you, but it's due to how well we communicate. We can have a fantastic message. We all probably have a really solid message. How well is that if we can't communicate it effectively? So that's what we're going to work on today. Let's try and see if this works. So far, so good. We did that. Sorry, normally we're better. Here we go. So somebody read this for me if you wouldn't mind. Let's go ahead and read that.
Dave Melinda is a great guy.
Wow, there it is, Tom. Thanks, buddy. This is actually Russian, okay? And the reason that I put this up there is a lot of times in our communication, we are talking a completely different language than the person that we're talking to. How long would you guys have sat there today if I would have started this in Russian and only talked Russian? How long would it have been before somebody would have said, hey, no offense, Dave, not understanding the language that you're talking? Oddly enough, when we communicate, very often we do the exact same thing. We talk to people the way that we think they should be communicated with, have no real understanding of them and how they're receiving the message. And so that's really what we want to focus on here today, is trying to find ways around that. Because look at that picture. That really goes on like every day in our business somewhere. And the interesting thing is both sides right. They're both right. So the communication gap, that Russian, is basically that right there. Communication gap is when meaning intended by the speaker is not what's understood by the recipient. One individual sees 4, the other individual sees 3. So what do? This is the communication gap that goes on every single day. So again, on the phone yesterday, driving back from the Mayo Clinic, they call me and it's we energies. I mean, total communication gap. Couldn't even understand. It was a language barrier in addition to other things. I'm saying to this individual, I've been on prepay for 20 years. What's going on? She's trying to convince me to get my credit card out and give her my credit card number. So a little bit of a communication gap, right? That goes on every single day, okay? And the interesting thing is, when you look at it, 70% of the time that we're awake, we're communicating. 70% of our day is consistently communicating. The question really is who got training on how to communicate? Did anyone take communication in college? So can you help us? Can you help us?
It's been a couple of years.
Well, just think back, put your thinking cap on.
I shouldn't have raised my hand.
That's all right. How was it? What was it? I mean, what did they teach you? What were some of the things, if you can think back, what was some of the stuff they taught you?
A lot of theories.
Okay.
And the power of persuasion. Where I'm going to leave it.
And interestingly enough, go ahead.
It has more to do with the people that you're talking to. Who's your audience?
Mm-hmm.
And really, are they seeking information from you? What are you trying to do?
Right.
I mean, I took communication, but that was 40 years ago.
Okay.
But the point is, people call me up every day.
Right.
And they're asking for information or advice or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, we're not communicating on the same level because of their knowledge.
Sure.
you know, I spend a lot of time downplaying, trying to talk in sixth grade education level.
Yep.
Because that's what most people are that I have to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And so recognizing who your audience is probably the most important thing.
Absolutely. And that's where we tend to get off, where if I would have started this in Russian, I was not identifying the fact that the vast majority, if not anybody here, quite frankly, can speak that language. So no self-awareness in my communication, I just keep on going. I just keep on going. And people are looking and there's blank stares on their face. They're starting to raise their hand. You know what? Just keep on going. I just keep on going. And that's what tends to happen in communication for us. And then the worst part in my mind is then I look back, if the communication wasn't solid, wasn't good, what do? Blame them, right? Because it wasn't me. Oh my gosh, I'm perfect. And what? Can you not understand me, Todd? Seriously.
Sorry, dude.
Right? But that's what we tend to do. So that's the focus, is why were we not taught communication? Why, when we sat in our interviews, I mean, I'm assuming for you guys in between jobs, they're at Pong, they're talking a lot about communication, a lot about how to effectively take some information that you have in here and be able to articulate it to a person that you're talking to. We all, in our last jobs, in our interviewing process, probably really stepped up our communication skills or communication skills. We just stepped them up. And then what happens? We get the job, and you know what? This is what we use for our communication right here, right? Now, I'm so darn old, I got to use these things. But the interesting thing is, like, a lot of people's communication is this. What are we going to ask it today? Am I going to have a good day communication-wise at the office? Outlook, not so good. Oh, well. And then we just go on. And interestingly enough, when you look at this, communication, there's certain people that think communication is only about the words that you use. Talked a lot about body language and tonality, and HR people are really dialed into this, because I can say one thing in a certain way and it means completely something different. So how is your tone with people? How are you saying it versus what you're saying? There's a huge difference. I'm an only child, and my mom would say my name 2 different ways. Same word, 2 different ways. And I knew exactly what both of them meant. Dave! I got no problem with that. Dave! Only child, something's broke, okay? I did something, I don't know what, but I'm guilty. So this is the situation where ask yourself that tone. And then, are you focusing on being heard or listening? We'll talk more about listening skills. But there's a huge difference between listening and hearing. Big difference between those two. How about people using the wrong message or the wrong channel? You know, I'm working with a group right now, and somebody like always sends these emails that are like attacking. It's like, pick up the phone and let's have a conversation rather than use this venue to hide behind that. The gap just widens. And there's a lot of people, how many here, which is a tough question, which is one of the gaps, one of the ways that we're going to bridge the gap, is how often do we look back at our communication that we just had and think, how did we do? How often are we actually thinking, how did we just do? Now I'm guessing, like in an interview, when you're sitting in the car driving, what are you thinking? How did I do, right? That's one of the thoughts that's probably in your mind. Maybe in a sales call, you're driving away from the sales call and you're thinking, how did I do? If I could do one thing better, what would it be? There is that type of reflection. Are we using that same reflection in communication in our different ways throughout the world. So those are quick things there. The cool part is, from a dollars and cents perspective, 57% of people report not giving clear direction. Yesterday, we found out that about half the people in their meetings leave a meeting without really a clear next step. So think of the last meeting that you were in. How did it go? Do you have a clear understanding of where you're supposed to go? Or is it kind of clear as mud? Like I had 22 people on my team in my last company that I owned. And I remember people would leave that meeting when I was still learning how to run a meeting. They were like, what just happened? I have no clue what just happened. Why am I here? It was just a mess. And here, we're seeing almost 6 out of 10 people are not given clear direction. So number one, if you lead that group, you should be able to make sure you're always giving clear direction. And if you're part of a group and you leave a meeting and you don't have clear direction, it's kind of on you. When someone says, are there any questions? That's the time to say, yeah, there are. There was a miscommunication that went on. Something went on. And almost 7 out of 10 managers aren't even comfortable communicating with people in general. I mean, the only thing you have as an attorney is communication, right? I mean, you're not selling anything other than some words, right?
Whatever I tell them.
Yeah.
It's key.
Yeah.
It's the only thing.
And so you want them to leave with as much crystal clarity as possible. Same way in psychology, right? What did he just say?
Try explaining the human brain how it works.
Yeah, exactly, right?
How do you get somebody in a position so that they're hearing what you're saying? Because people come at you with so much stress and anxiety.
Yep.
And they're listening for something.
Yep.
And I can't always give them the answer they want. It's
Sure.
usually
Yeah,
the
for
right
sure.
answer.
Yep.
And so they tune that out.
Mhm.
I mean, some days I feel like, why do I even try?
Right.
Because they're not going to listen anyway.
Right.
So, if I could get into how to make people listen, that would be great.
I mean, if we were talking about selling and we were talking about, think of the last time that you bought a car. Your mind immediately goes to wherever you were, whatever car, and it's very relatable. So what I like to do is take them out of the situation, to his point, take them out of that situation, put them in a situation they're comfortable with. Because I gotta say, when I go to an attorney, my wall's up, stress is up, tense is pressure, there's a lot of negativity going on. And now I have to listen on top of it. I mean, right? There's all this stuff. So, but you bring up a good point, because there's a lot of people that say, there's a lot of people that say, I don't have any trouble with communication. I'm fine. Okay? So we call that a blind spot. There's a possibility that you have a blind spot. So what I want to do is I want to ask you a question. If you've done this before, just bear with me. But who here does not know what the letter F looks like? All right? Let the record show no one raised their hand. Because I'm going to put a sentence up on the board, and I want you to count how many F's there are in that sentence. And I will bet you any amount of money that we will get today 4 different answers. Anyone want to bet on this? I've done this before, I'm just saying.
Are we betting on the over or under?
No, we're not betting on the over or under. Come on, Lucas. All right. Gosh, I keep pushing the wrong button. So go ahead. To yourself, count how many F's there are in there. Just to yourself, and then we'll go from there. So anyway, keep the number in your mind. Raise your hand if you just had 1. Okay? Raise your hand if you had 2. Raise your hand if you had 3. Go ahead, raise your hand. 4, 5, come on, 6. Any 7s? Okay. 4 answers. 4 different answers. That's what's called a blind spot. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with your intellect. It doesn't have anything to do with your brain. It's purely your eyesight didn't see and your brain didn't click in. When you saw an of, most of the people didn't pick that up. So there it is. So most people don't see the ofs that way. The reason I bring this up from a communication standpoint is it is entirely possible that you have a blind spot when it comes to communication. And the best way to do this is to ask somebody around you, what's my blind spot when it comes to my communication? What are you noticing? So we're going to go through some of the gaps there. So look at this. This is pretty cool. Effective communication skills gave 47% higher return over 5 years. So if you don't think communication makes us more money, this is basically sharing here that the better we communicate, the more money we're going to make. So that's what I want to do, is go through 7 of these tips. All right, 7 of them. Number 1, Stephen Covey's got this in his book, which is an awesome book. So when we communicate with people, are we seeking first to understand and then be understood? Or are we doing it the opposite way? Most people seek first to be understood. Think about the last time that you had communication with somebody. What was your main goal? Was your main goal to learn about them and their problem and what's going on with them? Or was your main goal to make sure that the information that you have, they gathered and they understood? It's a complete shift in our communication, going from one to the other. A lot of times we just want to get our point across. I mean, I tell you, yesterday that lady did not have she had 0 interest in learning about me. She had one interest and one interest only, and that was to get my credit card number. And all she wanted to do was, sir, I don't know what happened, just pay this. I'm like, I've paid this. Like for the last 20 years, I've paid, like, it's just auto pay. I don't know what to tell you, we're gonna shut your electricity off. Now, I'm sure nobody here ignores other people. There are times in our communication where we literally ignore somebody. So practice not doing that. The other piece is pretending you're listening. Have you ever been accused of that? Somebody's not listening really well. Listening, and we'll jump into that in a little bit more, but how about selective hearing? Anyone ever get accused of selective hearing? Probably just me again, but that's what happens. That's the first gap, is when we try not to do it that way. Bless you, we worry about ourselves rather than the person that we're communicating with. So think about your next meeting that you have today or tomorrow. And just for the fun of it, try shifting it from the one side to the other, because there's a lot of information we have to get out. There might even be an agenda we have to get out. How do you flip that around to make this about that person? Because they're going to open up a lot more. There's going to be a lot more positive that happens than negative. Sometimes, you know, you think to yourself, you're preparing ahead of time. Do you ever do that about halfway through somebody's talk or halfway through somebody's sentence? Your mind just starts formulating a response. That's really hard not to do. So or you decide prematurely what the other person means, and then you kind of finish it for them. Does anyone here finish other people's sentences ever? Right? Hopefully we don't do that to clients, because that's a taboo. Because what does that show? If I finish your sentence, what does that really? What am I saying to you? Right? You're not listening, and you're a know-it-all. I mean, it's like the ultimate disrespect. No offense, I got to tell you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, prospect, you might know something, but I know more. And I'm about to tell you what it is. And I'm not even going to let you finish, because you really don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sorry, but I have that all the time.
What do you mean? Tell me more. What do you got?
Topics and the issues. People are calling with knowing nothing.
Okay.
Asking very complicated questions.
Yes.
And wanting to know a lot.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, the area of law that I practice, it's complicated. So
Mhm.
it's not easy to communicate the full extent of what's going on
Mhm.
if they only want to listen to, no, I just fix it like this. I mean, most people want things fixed and they
Right.
really don't want to take responsibility for it.
Sure.
So communication is what they want to give you is
Mhm.
really more the concern I have. They don't want to tell the complete story
Sure.
or give all the information that I really need in order to give a good answer.
Yep. And then you hopefully you have questions to dig that down deeper.
It takes a lot of time and patience.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at WCTC teaching some nurses. We were talking about listening skills, which is right alongside this. And I said to them, so let's just say I go into the ER, whatever that's called, and I say, boy, I got something wrong with my elbow. Okay, they immediately dialed right into my elbow, and I said, well, I play racquetball 5 days a week, and they're like, well, there you go. Okay, so they start thinking, whatever, tendonitis and all that stuff, and I said, the odd thing is it kind of goes up into my shoulder as well. And they're still thinking the same line of reasoning. Then I said, actually it's kind of going into my heart a little bit. Is my heart on this side? Sorry, I'm backwards. I'm left-handed, so it's kind of weird. I'm having a heart attack in front of them, figuratively, and they're still working on my elbow. That's the problem with not asking the right questions in your communication. And that's that premature answer like that. If you don't let them finish, if they would have said what else is going on, we would have moved from here to here, here to here to here. They would have been able to pick that up, but they did not do that. They said, well, let me tell you about the human elbow. And they started going into that, and that is where the problem comes in. So if you don't ask those questions the right way, that's going to be the issue. And this is exactly what they do at the doctor, right? You come and sit down. They don't start telling you about themselves. Well, let me tell you about my background. What's the first thing they tell you? What's the first thing that after they clear the insurance, because that's always the first thing, what's the first thing that goes on? They ask you, what's wrong? First thing out of their mouth is they want to be the person that understands what you're going through. They don't sit there and say, see all those things on the wall? Let me tell you about each one. They don't go down that road. And that's what's so important about our communication. So think about that piece when you're communicating, is how open are you to the other person that you're talking to. Second one kind of dovetails this. Listen with the intent to understand, not reply. So often people are just listening. They're trying to find something so that they can reply. So my question is really, how good are your listening skills? So I want to do an exercise to see how good your listening skills really are. Now this is a listening skills test, telling you up front. We're going to say the word shop, S-H-O-P, 3 times. We're going to say it fast, and then I'm going to ask you a question after, and you just shout out the answer, okay? So shop 3 times fast, ask you a question, shoot out the answer, okay? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Shop, shop, shop. What do you do at a green light? So I did this yesterday in Minneapolis. Now in Rochester. I can already tell you that once they find out you're from Wisconsin, especially after the crappy way the Packers won on Monday night with all those blown calls, they were not happy with me at all, okay? Complicated with that is I said, boy, what do you guys do at a green light in Minnesota? Because half of them said stop. We're not listening to people. I even said, this is a listening skills test. So should we do another one to redeem yourself? Okay. This is a listening skills test, okay? So pretend you're the bus driver. First stop, 4 people get on the bus, okay? 2 people get off. Second stop, 1 person gets on, 1 person gets off. Third stop, nobody gets on, 2 people get off. Last stop, 3 people get on, and only 1 person gets off. Raise your hand if you can tell me the age of the bus driver. Raise your hand if you know the age of the bus driver. How old is the bus driver?
30.
How old are you?
30.
Thank you. Pretend you are the bus driver. I mean, we could do this all day, okay? Eventually, we're going to come to a point where it's like, yes, I suck at listening, okay? I said this is a test, and I said pretend you're the bus driver. Did I not? Yes. So again, when we're talking to people, we have to make sure that we're listening and we're not cluttering it with stuff about replying, taking half the time to formulate our response, shutting them down. Those are really important things for us not to do. So this is fun to do this. Listen as though you're going to repeat the conversation to somebody else. When you have that in your mind, it really changes how you listen because it's forcing you. Now, as guys, when somebody has a kid, like I have 4 grandsons, and we just had our 4th grandson less than 3 months ago. When my wife says, "What did they have?" Seriously, as a boy, okay. How big? How long? What's his name? How's the mom? I mean, you get it's like, I didn't listen to anything my son told me when he told me. That's on me. That's because I'm not listening. I wasn't thinking, okay, I better write this down. I better do something because I'm going to have to tell people about this. And with social media, maybe today you don't have to do that anymore. But I like the fact of thinking about what I'm hearing. If I'm going to go ahead and share it with somebody else, it makes me really dial down more on the details. Also, make sure that you keep your eye contact during the discussion. If I can't look you in the eye, what are you thinking?
Dishonest.
Yep, dishonest, right? The reverse is true because if I never take my eyes off you, that's kind of creepy too, right? So 6 seconds is about the average where you want to look at somebody, look away, and then come back. That's what they say statistically. And then the next thing is we talked about don't interrupt people. Just let them finish. And this is my personal difficulty right now. This is the one that I struggle with the most because I have the answer. I know the answer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it wants to come out. And I have to practice to let somebody finish what they're saying. And I keep rethinking about elbow, shoulder, heart. I could have died right there in front of them. I would have had a healed elbow. Tendinitis wouldn't have been there. But I'm laying there, I'm flatlined because they were not focused on the right thing because they weren't listening. And they interrupted and just totally dialed into that. All right. Next, stay open-minded. This is kind of what we've just been talking about. So often we just make assumptions. I mean, when you are at home and you're watching TV and on your screen, if you have that, and it shows an 800 number and it says a spam call, your immediate wall goes up. Why does our wall go up when we're talking to other people that we might know? Let's try and figure ways to drop that wall. Because look at this picture. Can you see a word in that picture? Yeah, there's a word in there. I'm not lying. How about this? How many legs are on that elephant? Our mind can't work with this stuff. So the goal here is to stay open in our communication. Try desperately not to pre-decide. I already know where this is going to go. I already know the outcome of this. I already know. And it's so difficult when you have something. How do you talk to somebody that's already made up their mind? I mean, if somebody asked me how my day was going, and I said, well, let me tell you back when I was 4 years old. Right? And I got to go through this whole litany of stuff just to get you to today. You might need that in a legal situation, in a psychological situation. You might need to know that. Not necessarily in every communication. So don't criticize, don't judge, don't be too quick. Practice your patience. Just let people finish. It's totally okay to let people finish, okay? Number 4, recognize differences in personalities. Now, everybody here falls into one of these 4 categories for the most part, and personality plays a huge role in our communication. Because just look at the differences. I mean, you can pick whatever one you want. The red one is a D for the disc if you're into disc. The red is the D person. You know what? Let's do it right now. Well, the C person, the blue one up there, let's do it right. Do you want to get it done now, or do you want to get it done right? Different people have different answers to that. So when I'm communicating with people, I have to find out where are they in this? Where do they fit? So the cool part is another one of your opportunities on here if you want to. We actually, the third one, we have normally charged $209 for the disc assessment. You can get one for free if you want. Just leave me your email address. You'll be able to find out where you fall in there. There's 60 pages. There's a ton of great information in there. The other piece that's helpful on that is it'll give you your EQ, which is actually your emotional quotient, where you fit, emotional intelligence-wise. Now, the cool part about that is the low EQ people make about $29,000 less than high EQ people. And EQ is something that you can improve upon. And you watch when you're driving, the low EQ people, and this might step on somebody's toes, but if somebody cuts you off, we had somebody, I was in a training, and she said, on the way here, somebody cut me off. And she said, you know what I did? I got up within 3 inches of their bumper. Literally, she was telling me this. I got within 3 inches of the bumper. I followed her wherever she went. She finally knew what was going on. She pulled off in a parking lot. I pulled up right behind her. I got out of my car. I went right up to the window. I went like this, and I went like this, and I got in my car and left. Okay, that's kind of low EQ, and just in case you're curious, okay? But think about that at work. When something emotional happens, it can shut people down for the day. Do you ever have that where it's like, oh, don't go by him. Huh. He's having whatever he's having. That's not good. And especially in communication, because usually either we're going to shut down or we're going to say things we don't mean. So just realize in your communication that you have 4 different potentials. Everybody here falls into one of those 4. So if you want to learn more, just click that, and I will be happy to shoot you that for you. And it's a lot of fun. Okay, number 6, focus. So 9 out of 10 people in this meeting right now, from the time that we started, 9 out of 10 of you have daydreamed about something. And I'm totally okay with that. Because the reality is, so have I. Sitting here, I have daydreamed. Now, I'm totally envious of your socks, okay? But I have to say, because I'm having pizza tonight, so I have my pizza socks. So I started thinking about pizza. And I'm talking to you, I'm doing this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could go for a piece of pizza right now. Now I was doing this, we were doing a customer service boot camp a couple weeks ago in Menominee Falls with the company, and I said that, and it was so odd because I was saying to people, you know, thinking about going above and beyond, right? The lady leaves the room as part of the group, comes back. 30 minutes later, she walks in with a pizza. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is fantastic customer experience. I said I was hungry for a pizza, and there it shows up 30 minutes later. So don't do that for today. We have awesome cupcakes, but stay focused. 9 out of 10 people daydream in meetings. And you know why people daydream? Very, very simple. We are averaging about 125 to 150 words a minute is what I'm able to share with you. Our brain processes about 3,000 words a minute. So that gap right there, I have to come to the realization that I can't provide all the stimulus you need. You have to fill in with something else. Well, we have to practice this. And nothing worse than sitting across from a client, a prospect, someone on your team, and you're daydreaming because you're totally falling into this piece right here. That's a bad spot to be. So we have to practice focusing, focus. All right, number 6 is stay positive. In our communication, we need to remain positive as much as we possibly can. I mean, when you look at this, these two pictures, it's just your natural gravitation is to go to one or the other. Now, there's something that I just discovered in working with this. It's called the negativity bias. When you have something going on, the tendency is to be negative even if there's as much positive there. So our natural tendency is to go negative. So we're already kind of at a disadvantage. So I just want to make sure that we don't naturally go there without realizing that, hey, we don't have to. We can pull our way back. Because I can say that it's bright out or I can say it's cloudy out. And right now I'm like, it's cloudy. This is ridiculous. And there's another daydream, right? It's like, I wonder what it's like in San Diego right now. I can just go off on that. But hopefully in this case we can stay positive because that negativity bias is not a good spot to be. If you want to stay positive, it adds up to 10 years in your life, reduces stress, you'll make more money. And boy, I tell you, I don't know how many people would show up if today's topic was 10 ways to be negative. Probably not really needing that, right? Okay, the last one then. I think this is really important to summarize what you share, and I'm just learning how to do this right now, is to recap what I just heard somebody say. Because it really helps. So the definition of paraphrase, I wrote this down because I thought it was cool. Express the meaning using different words, especially to achieve greater clarity. So if you're sitting with somebody, so do you recap your, if I understand this is that?
You usually have to because you're getting instructions.
Okay.
And they need the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come talk to me type thing in order to, because you have to focus them down the road.
People like number 1, they like that layout. There's 3-step process to this or 4-step process to that. It just kind of compartmentalizes it, puts it into a way that we can use. In this case, we want to make sure that we reword whatever they're saying. I want to make sure that I get what they're saying. Best way that I know how to do it for me is just to say these words. If I'm hearing you right, you mean that. If I'm hearing this right, this is what I'm getting from what you're telling me. And that's what I think really, if you can reiterate, you can share with them what you heard and it matches what they say, then that communication gap is pretty much gone. I could have said to that lady on the phone, so just let me get this straight. I'm going to give you my credit card and you're going to keep my power on. I mean, that's what she was telling me. That's if I would have got to that point, because magically I got disconnected once I said I'm onto your scam. I all of a sudden, something happened, right? Magic. What's one thing Think about what we talked about. Think about the different things. And this is kind of my way of recapping it. What's one thing you learned or you heard that you're going to work on?
Keeping eye contact. I feel like I do that in a professional setting, but then so many things are going on in a group of friends or with my wife. I'm just like paying attention to the TV or the
Yeah.
movie and not looking at her. So then I have selective listening.
Right.
For a half hour later when I
Yeah.
do what she told me to do.
When she competes with the TV, isn't that brutal?
Sundays are the worst.
You know? I mean, there should just be like a little no, Budinsky zone or something, right? So, awesome. Who else? Who else? Go ahead.
Practice focusing and not being easily distracted.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if you, to really, for me, my focus, what I do is I envision a blank sheet of paper. Because that means there's nothing on there. I don't have any preconceived notions. I don't have any agenda. I just envision a blank sheet of paper so that I'm going to start writing on that when that person starts talking. All right. Well, one last thing is make sure that you say hi to somebody that you don't know if you can. Introduce yourself. Make sure that somebody here needs something from you. Awesome. Thank you guys so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Live longer,
Live-
make more money, stay positive,
Yes.
right?
Yep, be positive. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.